Welcome to Building the Best You, a destination for you to reimagine what is possible in your life and then create it. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm your host, Jeanne Collins, and today we are going to talk about animals and animal health. And this is a subject that I absolutely love. We have Dr. Judy Morgan on the show, and Judy has just the most incredible background. She's a retired veterinarian, acupuncturist, chiropractor. She specializes in health and nutrition for pets. She has a podcast, guys. We're going to put that in the show notes. We're going to talk about that. And her passion in life is exposing people to how to get their pets to live a healthier, better life. And I love that subject. So, Dr. Morgan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
Oh, thank you. So give us a little bit of background. Were you always like, I must be a veterinarian, or how did that come about in your life?
I must be a veterinarian since I was about 12 years old. And I was so single-minded all through high school, all through undergrad. I was so anxious to become a veterinarian that I did my undergrad in 3 years. So taking 20 to 22 credits a semester, doing summer school, like just around the clock, I must. And being from New Jersey at the time, we didn't have a vet school. And I think there were maybe 23 vet schools in the country at that time. And only 7 would even take my application because I didn't live in the state where the school was. And so the chances of getting in were 13 to 1.
Wow.
At that time. And there weren't very many women in the profession back then. So my class, I ended up at University of Illinois, and there were only about 25% women. Now it's about 95% women. I think we need to switch it back and get it a little more even again. But, I was just so excited. And, then all through vet school, I could not wait to go out into practice. But I was trained University of Illinois, so middle of the Midwest in the early 80s. Very, very, very traditional. Acupuncture, herbs, chiropractic, none of that existed. None of that was talked about. And I think if anybody did try to mention it, we would probably be given the, oh my gosh, like you're crazy. When I started changing over about 10 years into practice was when I got introduced to chiropractic care in animals, then acupuncture, herbs, food therapy, all the different things that I explored. I had a business partner in my clinic at the time, and he was the majority partner. And after I'd been doing all this stuff for a few years, he said, I don't understand the black magic that you're doing. It's voodoo. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't want to be a part of this. And I said, okay. And so we parted ways on very good terms. His clinic, the main clinic, was only 5 miles up the road from my clinic. And so I bought out his share of the practice and it became mine. And then eventually I started a second one. And I never gave up on traditional medicine because I think it certainly has value. But by having all these other tools in my toolbox, I could do a lot more. And I could actually get some healing instead of just chronic medication, chronic inflammatory disease treatment, which is so unrewarding.
Yeah.
Versus I can take an animal who comes to me with a laundry list of problems and a laundry list of medications. And within usually a pretty short period of time, we can reverse so much of that and we can get rid of all or most of the medications and really see healing take place. And it's in my mind, it really is miraculous. But in my mind, I've also come to understand that God gives us all the tools to keep our bodies healthy and to heal. We just have to use them. And unfortunately, traditional medicine doesn't use those things very often.
It's true. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about humans or pets.
Exactly.
Really. It almost sounds like functional medicine for animals. Is that a good way to describe it for people to understand the connection between that? And I've never even knew that existed, to be honest. I would think there are probably very few people or a very small set of veterinarians in our country that are like that. Or is that growing?
It is growing, not as fast as I would like it to. There's about 60,000 veterinarians in the country. And so the biggest veterinary conferences have 20,000 veterinarians will show up. AHVMA, which is the Holistic Veterinary Medical Association, their annual conference gets about 300 people. So you can see there's a huge difference. And not everybody can come. Obviously, their membership is larger than that, but it's still very, very small percentage. There are, so we have this wonderful doctor, Dr. Weishang She, who opened the Chi Institute, which is now the Chi University in Florida, to train veterinarians in acupuncture and Chinese herbs and food therapy. And since he started that right around 2000, he has trained about 40,000 veterinarians in acupuncture worldwide. But
Wow.
that's a huge shift. So there are a lot of traditional practices who might have that one practitioner who knows how to do acupuncture and knows that maybe we should be doing things a little bit differently. But for instance, my ex-partner's clinic, he had 8 doctors. I had 1 or 2. They were 5 miles up the road from us. And one of the doctors that worked for both clinics when we were together, when we split, she stayed with my clinic for a couple of years and then she went back to the bigger clinic. While she was with me, she was trained in chiropractic and acupuncture. So when she went back to that clinic, I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to get as many referrals from there. And, maybe some of our people who like her are going to go back up the road with her. And that didn't happen. And so I kept getting new clients from that clinic. And so finally I started asking people, you do know that there is a doctor at that clinic who practices acupuncture and can do chiropractic, right? And they're like, really? There is? Like they had no idea. And the problem was 7 doctors in the practice were very traditional, thought that stuff was voodoo and black magic, and they wouldn't tell their clients like, hey, this might help. And so nobody referred within their own practice. Instead, people, by word of mouth found out about my practice 5 miles down the road. And so, I always said to people, well, they have somebody up there who could do this. If you want to, just leave and go back there. And I would say 99% of the time, people are like, no, we're here. We like you, but we'll just stay.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of clinics like that where they have someone who can do these alternative therapies. But if the other people in the practice don't believe in it, they're not even going to tell you.
Sure.
So you have to ask.
Yeah, right. And they're not going to advertise it if the people that are running the clinic don't think that it's
Right.
valid. Then
Right.
you can have that skill, but you're not allowed to practice it there.
Right.
So,
Yeah, it's really weird.
which is so strange. It really is so strange.
Well, if you're really stuck in the traditional medicine model, there's a lot of blinders on and a lot of closed minds, unfortunately.
Which I would just think the progression in human medicine towards an acceptance of more alternative practices. Like, I don't even consider a chiropractic an alternative medicine anymore in our country. I mean, like, they're everywhere. They're all over the place. They're in strip
They are
malls. They're
everywhere.
everywhere. So it's like chiropractic isn't, I would say to me, doesn't feel alternative at all
In
for
the
humans.
veterinary world, it
But
absolutely is.
clearly it is. I've never even heard of it and wouldn't
See?
have even, like, I would think about my dog and be like, I don't even know how you do, like, how on a dog are you doing like a spinal adjustment? I mean, they don't even sit still.
Oh, they do when you adjust them. They love it.
Oh.
But I've done humongous draft horses. I've done all kinds of weird species. I've done birds. I've done rabbits. It's not about force. It's because people look at me. I'm short. I'm like 5'3".
Yeah.
So people look at me and go, "How are you going to adjust a horse?" And it's about speed. It's not about power. And in the early days of chiropractic with horses, people would literally use sledgehammers, mallets, 2x4s, like crazy. There was one guy in Minnesota when we were first talking about doing spinal adjustments. He literally would hook chains up to each end of the horse and have 2 tractors and pull in each direction.
Oh my goodness.
That's dangerous. That is
Yes.
bad. That gives the term chiropractic a really bad image and a bad
Yeah.
reputation, and nobody would ever have chiropractic done on their animals, but that's not how it's done.
Right.
And the changes that we see with it is miraculous. I did a lot of horse work for a while when I was doing a lot of chiropractic and acupuncture. And, the animals, they can't lie. They can't make stuff up. You don't get the placebo effect. It's
Right.
like he was limping before I did the adjustment. He's not limping now. Okay, that's real.
Yeah. That is wild. And acupuncture. So I think about acupuncture and I think like they put the needles in and you have this period of zen that you're supposed to lie and let it happen. So is it the same with animals and you have that period where the needles sit in them and somehow you're supposed to keep them calm?
Yeah, but 90% of them, you put the needles in and they fall asleep.
Really?
Yeah, they fall asleep. And so the first time I ever had acupuncture done on one of my animals is before I learned it.
Mhm.
We had a pony who had something called moon blindness, where they periodically go blind. They get an inflammation in their eyes. And so the pony had gone blind that morning. This is one of my daughter's show ponies. So I called a friend who did equine acupuncture and I said, I know you're an hour away. Can you please come down and do my pony? I'll pay you whatever you need. You need lunch. What is it I got to do to
Yeah.
get you to come work on this pony? And so she did. And she came in my barn and we had the pony tied in the barn and she couldn't see anything. And she put the needles in and the pony fell sound asleep. Like her head was hanging so low, she was literally like hanging on her lead lines. And I said, "Well, what now?" And she said, "We're just going to stand here and wait. We'll chat." I'm like, "Okay, I don't know what's going to happen." And about 15 minutes later, all of a sudden, the pony's head popped up and her eyes blinked open and she went and did a full body shake and needles flew all over the barn. And I went, "That's cool." She said, "Yeah, they all do that."
Whoa.
Okay. So, the Zen period was over.
Yeah.
And, so in practice, we tend to set a timer, but with horses, I never did. It was like, they'll tell me.
Yeah.
And actually, the other animals will too, but, we tend to be on our own schedule. So we're like, I'm setting a timer for 10 minutes.
Right.
So I said, well, that was really cool. Now what? She said, I'm done. And so I went to lead the pony out of the barn. And coming right out of the barn, there were a couple of puddles. And I'm leading the pony, not really telling her where to go. The pony gets to the puddle and walks around it. And I'm
Around
like,
the
oh my gosh, she can see. So we went from blind. 15 minutes later, the pony can now see because she had acupuncture needles in her. And for me, that was one of those life-changing moments. I was like, okay, I am going to school. I am learning this. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And literally, I mean, with my chiropractic and my acupuncture, we saw those miracles all the time.
Wow.
It's like if I went 5 days without seeing a miracle, it was like, what am I doing wrong?
Right.
So the animals are so great because of that.
That is so wild. Is it more common in, let's say, horses? Because use horses as an example. Is it more common to see people practicing on larger animals like horses, or it's just as common in dogs and cats and smaller?
Probably more common because there are more small
Okay.
animal practitioners than
Yeah.
large animal.
Yeah.
But I mean, we do it on all animals.
All animals.
I
Doesn't
was
matter.
in China studying acupuncture. It was a group of 50 veterinarians. And one veterinarian gave a talk on acupuncture points in llamas because he did a lot of llama and alpaca work. And another one gave a talk on acupuncture in dolphins because she was a marine biologist.
Wow.
So she's in the tank doing acupuncture on the dolphins. How cool is
That is
that?
wild. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I love that. And is there a common reason why someone should seek out acupuncture or chiropractic for their dogs?
Frankly, I think that we should be using them to keep our animals healthy. Like for
Okay.
me, I don't have back pain. I don't need to go to a chiropractor, but I do. I go for maintenance,
Mhm.
which, by the way, disability insurance companies will not allow you to do that.
I know.
Very odd. I'm like, no, I'm using this for maintenance. So they made me go 2 years without seeing a chiropractor. It's like, man, this really stinks because now I am going to have back problems. Thanks
Right.
a lot.
I know.
So really for our animals, we should be starting when they're fairly young and just having routine adjustments. And if you get someone who, if you have a veterinarian who understands Chinese medicine, it's all about keeping the body in balance.
Sure.
So here's a example. I'll use me. I am a wood personality, which means I think up a lot of ideas, but I kind of have a problem with follow through. Like I get 90% through and then I'm like, I'm sick of this. I'm done. So, somebody else has to either make me do it or pick up the pieces. I'm very easygoing until things are not going my way. And then I get so frustrated. And then that frustration comes out as angry, like really angry. So the wood personalities are volcanoes.
Right.
Like we simmer along until like somebody really ticks us off and then you're dead to me.
You take it off.
That sort of thing. So I know that about myself, and I'm ruled by the liver and gallbladder, and that's where I'm going to show issues. Well, the element that keeps the wood element in check is the metal element, which is lung and large intestine. And so now that I'm older, my metal element is really struggling because it has spent 67 years trying to keep my wood. So the metal is the axe that chops down the tree.
Yeah.
That axe has been working so hard for 67 years to keep this tree under control that I now struggle with weakness in the respiratory system because that's metal and my metal is worn out. So I know what foods I can eat, what herbs I can take to strengthen that element so it can keep that wood personality in check. And so we can do that same thing for our animals. Actually, on our website, we have a pet personality profile and we have a human personality profile.
Yeah.
So you can figure out where their strengths and weaknesses or yours are. And then we tell you how to, what foods to use to strengthen or calm down whatever element needs whatever
Right.
issue. So it's really about keeping things in balance. So I would love it when people would come in with an apparently healthy animal and say, no, I just want to do maintenance. I just want to make sure that we keep them this way.
Yes.
Like, tell me what their personality is. Tell me where their struggles are going to be so that I can be proactive. That's really how we should do this. But unfortunately for holistic practitioners, almost always we get to see the animals after they've already been to 4 different traditional practitioners. They've been to a bunch of specialists and they're frustrated, fed up, and out of money. And then they come to us and go fix it.
Mm,
And, the great thing is we have more tools and they're different
right.
tools. So a
Yeah.
lot of times we can fix it or we can at least make it better. But it would be so much better if we could start
Sure. Of course.
earlier.
Yes. Right.
So,
Prevention.
and that was the great thing with my practice. I did this it was almost 40 years that I was in practice and I was doing alternative medicine for 30 of that. So a lot of my clients were on their second or third generation of pets. And so after they came to me with the first one, kind of at the end of the line with, can we solve this? Then when they would get a new one, it would be like, okay, I'm starting off on the right foot. And, so then we saw great differences in health and longevity and health span, which is really what we want for everybody. Like my goal is to have dogs, no matter what size they are, living to 20 and cats living to 30.
Wow.
And we saw a lot of that in our practice.
Okay, so how are you going to make my precious little fur babies live to 20? Because, I got big dudes and I'm like, if they live past 12, that's like.
Yeah. So most of our big dudes, we were getting 16-ish. But again, most of those were dogs that came to me already with a lot of problems. So the fact that we could get them turned around and get to 16 was always just, yay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things. First of all, mental stimulation, exercise, outside time, pack time. And so that
Mhm.
pack may be with other dogs. It may be with the people, whoever your dog's pack is. And so if you have a single dog and then you have a bunch of kids, that's the pack.
Yeah.
But they need, we need to keep them emotionally healthy. So like for me, if your dog's a wood personality, if they're not getting exercise and they're not getting movement, we're going to have
Yeah.
all kinds of problems. So that's number one. And that's the easiest one to fix. It's like, just get them outside, play with them, take them for walks. If you do dog parks, if you have a dog that's good with that, then do that.
Right.
If you don't, like my dogs would never do well in a dog park. So, but just keep them stimulated mentally, physically, keep them moving. Second, we don't want to use harsh chemicals on our pets. And unfortunately, the traditional veterinary world is now all about feeding pesticides to our pets, either in a monthly pill or every 3-month pill or in a monthly injection or now the 12-month injection, which is just beyond horrible. Why are we feeding pesticides to our pets? Would we ever do that to our children? If your pediatrician said, here's this pesticide pill, your kid won't get bitten by a mosquito, or, it'll kill the mosquito after your child gets bitten. Like, what good does that do? Why would I do? I would never poison my kids. So that
Yeah.
includes my kids with 4 legs.
So wait, can I ask you a question? When you say, I just want to know like specifically, because not everybody will understand what you're talking about. When you say we shouldn't be giving them pesticides, are you referring to, the 3-month tick pill and the monthly flea pill and heartworm and all the things that we give to our pets?
Yeah. So heartworm falls in a slightly different category, but what I'm talking about are basically the flea and tick pesticides. So either pills that you give or
Yep.
topical things that you put on them or now the injections that they're
Yep.
giving, they're all neurotoxins.
Yeah.
And they're only supposed to affect the bugs, the insects and the arachnids, which are the ticks. But we have a certain subset of dogs and cats where it crosses the blood-brain barrier and we don't know why, and it causes them to have seizures and tremors and not be able to walk correctly and death.
Mm.
And it's a huge number. There are hundreds of thousands of reports. Like the veterinarians will say, oh, these are so safe. Millions of doses have been sold. Yes, and hundreds of thousands of adverse events have been reported to FDA and the European Medical Association. And they tell us flat out that only 1% of adverse events are reported. So if you have 300,000 reports and that's only 1%,
Right.
then how safe is this really?
Right. Yeah.
So I don't use chemicals on my animals. And along that line, cleaning chemicals, candles, Teflon coated pans, all those things that we use in our household, we're all being poisoned by all that stuff. The fire retardants on all the furnitures and the carpets and the flooring and, the VOCs from the paints. It's toxic for us. Our pets super concentrate those things. So when we look at studies of hair, urine, and stool samples and blood samples from dogs and cats and people living in the same household, the people will have a lot of those toxins in those samples. The dogs will multiply it by about 10 times, and the cats will multiply it by about 20 times. Cats are super concentrators of all those chemicals. And we know that a lot of them cause cancer. The cancer rate in dogs right now is 1.68 out of every 2.
Wow. That's a lot.
Scary.
That's a
It
lot.
is really scary.
Yeah.
So
No, it's
we're
very
feeding them
common.
pesticides, and then they live in an environment full of chemicals. So we need to clean up our environment. We need to not use pesticides and herbicides on our yards where
Mhm.
our dogs and cats are out there. Well, maybe your cats, but
Yeah.
I have outdoor cats.
Yeah.
I live on a farm. Um, but if your dog is out there on the yard that's just been sprayed with pesticides and herbicides for the weeds, they're sucking all that up into their
Totally.
system. And,
Yeah.
so we need to clean up our environment, and we need to not be purposely poisoning them with all these things. And, the line that you're fed is, well, fleas carry tapeworms and they can carry, other diseases, and ticks carry Lyme disease. Oh my gosh, we should all, shudder. But they also carry about 12 other tick-borne diseases. Most of those chemicals, the tick has to bite your pet in order to get the chemical to die. So we're
Right.
not preventing our pets from being bitten. So if you have a dog with a flea allergy and you're using the pills because you don't want them to get bitten by a flea, it doesn't work. They're still
Right.
getting bitten by the fleas.
Sure.
95% of the flea and tick life cycle is not spent on the animal. It's in the environment. It's in your house. It's in your yard. It's where you go for a walk. So if we focus on only the animal, we're only focusing on 5% of the life cycle. So if you have a flea infestation, you better be treating your house and your yard
Yeah.
and not with chemicals.
Right.
There's a million different ways you can do it. You can use essential oils, you can use herbs, you can use diatomaceous earth. There's a lot of things. And so if you go to our website, naturallyhealthypets.com, just type in fleas or type in ticks in the search bar, and all the different things that you can use. So I live in the South. Fleas are definitely an issue. So we layer things on. My dogs all wear a scalar wave tag. They also are fed a product that has neem and garlic and yarrow and all the things, B vitamins, all the things that don't taste good to fleas and ticks.
Yeah.
And then if we're going out for a walk in the high grass where we might have more of an issue, then I'm also going to spray them with essential oil spray that's
Mm.
made specifically for pets. Be very careful with that.
Yeah.
And so I use multiple layers to keep them free from pests. And so there are natural ways that we can do that. And, I get people that push back all the time. It's not going to work, blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you, I've had people who live in Florida that have had horrible flea infestations in the past. And so we give them multiple layers to put on. And then every year I get the no more fleas this year,
Yeah.
no more fleas this year. And, so when you have people who live in flea country and they're like, yeah, I don't have a problem using all natural products, we know it can work. So from there, we'll go to vaccines. Over vaccination is a huge problem in our pets, just like it is in children and humans in general. And so there's a certain subset of people, I just saw a study on this the other day. There's a certain subset of people that are going to say yes to every vaccine that is recommended, whether it's human or animal.
Sure.
Probably not going to change the minds on those people. There's a certain subset of people who are going to say no to every vaccine, whether
Mhm.
it's human or animal. Probably not going to change the minds on those.
Yeah.
And then there's a sliding scale in between. And so I have been accused of being an anti-vaxxer many times. I have never, ever said I am 100% anti-vaccine, although the more I study them, the more I move toward that side of the scale. And especially with, the things that have happened in the last 5 years, I'm like, yeah, we maybe should move toward that side of the scale. But, I went to vet school in the early 80s, and that's when parvo first raised its ugly head.
Mhm.
And so when I was in vet school, we had isolation wards filled to the gills with dogs and puppies with bleeding from both ends
Oh,
and dying. And it was tragic. Like,
that's
we're
awful.
trying to, it's viral, so we don't have good antivirals. And it was tragic. And so here we are as vet students. We're here because we want to save the world. We want to save all the animals, and we're like, they're dying right and left. And it was either my junior or senior year. They started using a feline, so a cat parvovirus vaccine, which has a different effect in cats, but it was a related virus. So they said, well, we'll just use this because we have this. And it worked. And then they developed the canine parvovirus vaccine. And so when we opened my first clinic, it was a very low income area. And so there was a lot of backyard breeding of Rottweilers and Dobermans and Labradors and Mastiffs, like all these, big breeds.
Sure.
And, they were all tied on chains outside and they didn't get any veterinary care. So we saw a lot of heartworm. We saw a lot of parvovirus. And so every spring, we're like, oh, here it comes. Every spring and summer, we've got litters of puppies coming in with parvovirus. And, so we kind of started a campaign. It was before I was as holistic as I am now, but we started a campaign and we said, we need to reach these people. So I signed up to do the free rabies clinic
Mhm.
in town, and we vaccinated 900 animals in like a 3-hour period. So
Wow.
it's, march them in, march them out, march them
Yeah.
in. But it was a free rabies clinic. New Jersey does that. And they hire a veterinarian to do that. So every single person who came through with a dog, I'm like, okay, I can only give you the rabies vaccine today, but we've got a huge parvo problem in the area. We need to educate you. We need you to get in, get this dog in. We'll give you a parvo vaccine.
Yeah.
And so we did a big campaign and we stopped seeing parvo.
Mm.
And, because once we got the mamas vaccinated that
Yeah.
were having all the puppies, then they're passing that immunity on to the babies. And so we were able to make a difference. So that's the kind of time when you can say, yeah, vaccine's good. This made a difference. We're not having puppies dying of parvo right and left. So I'm not anti-vaccine, but I'm anti-over-vaccine. And we now know that the core vaccines, distemper, hepatitis, parvo, and rabies, last 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
when I graduated, and actually still a lot of the schools are still saying vaccinate every year, every year, every year, every year. Why are we vaccinating every year? We don't need to do that. There are some vaccines that only last a year. The other thing is that we've been taught for so long, every pet gets every vaccine that we have.
Right.
And if you have a Maltese that lives in your high rise apartment and uses a potty pad and never goes outside, that's got a really different exposure level
Yes.
from the guy who lives on a farm with a hunting dog that's out in the
Totally.
fields all the time.
Yes.
And
for sure.
so we really need to look at individualized medicine, individualized care. If you walk into a vet clinic with your new puppy and they go, here's what we do for all puppies, and they hand you the list.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
Like, let's have a conversation about what my puppy is going to do. Let's have a conversation about my cat. My barn
Yeah.
cats have a very different lifestyle from my indoor cats. So, what do we need to do for one versus the other? So, it really is that individual conversation. And so, one of my books, Raising Naturally Healthy Pets, the vaccine chapter is actually the longest chapter because it talks
Yeah.
about every single vaccine for dogs and cats, how the disease is spread, how your pet might, catch that. Would they need the vaccine? How long does the vaccine last? Is it a good vaccine or a highly reactive vaccine or a vaccine that really only has a 50% efficacy rate? So, the whole point is being educated
Yeah.
so that you can be empowered. When you walk into that appointment, you can say, well, my pet has no exposure to that. I really don't need that. We are backed into a corner with a couple of things. Rabies is
Mhm.
required every 3
Yep.
years,
Yep.
pretty much everywhere.
Everywhere.
And for people who take their dogs to boarding, grooming, or daycare,
Mhm.
that's kind of a nightmare because a lot of those facilities require a laundry list of vaccines, and a lot of them don't recognize that the core vaccines last longer than a year.
Right.
And
Sure.
so for me, that's an education problem. We haven't educated the owners of those facilities. And a lot of times, like in New York City, the bureaucrats are the ones that are setting the laws for what boarding, grooming, and daycare have to require. And it's like, which one of them went to vet school or med school or knows anything about vaccines?
Sure.
Like maybe somebody needs to get in there and lobby and say, hey, let me stand here in front of your meeting and tell you what they really need and how long these last and what a more realistic requirement would be. So that's an education problem.
Yeah.
And so then that brings us to food. I was saving food for last because it's a biggie.
I was like, oh, I hope she gets to food. And if not, I'm asking about food because that's
I've been kind of working my way from the easy ones
right.
to
I was like, I know
difficult.
we're going to definitely talk about food here and I can't wait.
So, oh man. So, the great thing right now is we're hearing so much about ultra processed food for people.
Yes.
And we don't really always equate that to ultra processed food for pets.
Right.
So when you go to the grocery store, we're told, if you're going to eat healthy, well, if you're like me and you're going to eat healthy, you're raising all of your own meat and produce. So I do it different from everybody else because I'm a little nuts.
Right.
But I've learned over the years, like, I don't want to eat that stuff. That's
good for you, though. That's great.
There's a few things I can't grow, so I eat less of those. So when you go to the grocery store, you're told shop the perimeter. That's where the fresh stuff is, right? That's where the produce, the fresh meats, all that stuff. Where's the pet food?
Yeah.
It's in the middle. It's in the ultra-processed food aisles.
Right.
Because it's ultra-processed food that is at the grocery store.
Yes.
And when you go to the big box stores, it's also mostly ultra-processed food. So where are we going to find less processed or minimally processed food? We're going to find it from all the smaller pet food companies. Luckily, in the past dozen years or so, there have been many that have hit the market because they're doing it in response. It's just like I saw this great article the other day that talked about, how are these changes in vaccination status for children and ultra processed food? Where did those changes come from? Where did it start from? It started from the mamas. The mamas who said, my kid was fine until he got those 6 vaccines yesterday, and now he can't talk and he's shaking all over, and I'm never going to see my normal child again.
Yeah.
And so millions of moms got together and said, there's something wrong. And it took those millions of moms to make the difference. Well, guess what? There's millions of pet owner moms and dads out there who are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Like,
that's true.
why does my pet have chronic ear infections? Why is my pet scratching and itching all the time? Why does my pet have chronic pancreatitis, chronic arthritis, chronic encephalitis now we're seeing so much of? Where's all that coming from? Coming from over-vaccination, overuse of chemicals, and feeding ultra-processed food. So the ultra-processed food industry for pets is basically owned by Mars and Nestle Purina, two candy companies that also make pet food and human food ultra-processed. And where do the waste products that they have left over from their human food go to?
Pets.
You betcha.
Yep.
So the pets get like the worst of the worst. And then, they've done such a good job buying the veterinary industry and sponsoring their continuing education and chairs at their, professorship chairs at their, endowments, all that kind of stuff at the schools, giving free or very low priced ultra processed food to the vet students who are starving and have huge debt and have to feed all their animals because we all have way too many.
Yeah.
And so we're all like, oh, I'm so grateful to them. They gave me food, the $50 bag food, they gave it to me for $10. Like, I'm so grateful. I'll certainly recommend them when I get into practice. I mean, that's what I did.
Right.
I didn't know any better. It's like, well, that's the food we're supposed to recommend.
Right.
My first book has a chapter in it called Pet Food Salesman, where I sold more prescription diets and, the ultra processed food than probably anybody in my class. Like I was the poster child.
Yep.
Because that's what we were taught was the best of the best. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to all those animals.
Right.
So we don't want them eating ultra processed food. And guess what? There's no such thing as people food.
Okay.
The veterinarians will tell you, don't feed your dog any people food.
Right.
How horrible. You might unbalance their nutritionally balanced, ultra processed food that's full of synthetic vitamins and minerals that we had to add back in because there was none left after we cooked it with high heat 6 times. So, what we're seeing is the pet parents going, oh. And so what I push for now is real food for our pets, not the waste products and leftovers, not the rendered meals. I want to see on a label chicken hearts, chicken livers, cranberries, blueberries, broccoli, Green beans. Like, I want to see real names for
Yeah.
real foods.
Yes.
And it can be a little bit difficult sometimes to balance the diet for our pets without sometimes having to resort to some sort of a vitamin. So zinc is very hard to get up to the levels that they need unless you want to feed it oysters. And
Mhm.
those are great. But if you have a seafood allergy, you're probably not going to do that. Um, vitamin D, like the fat soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K are harmed very easily in processing.
Mhm.
So even if the diet starts out as it's balanced, like everything looks like it's there, by the time it goes through freeze drying or freezing or canning or gently cooking, whatever, a lot of times we are destroying some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to add that back in. There are natural ways we can do it too. Like, what are great vitamin D sources? Hey, salmon, egg yolks, these are great things. We can put them in the bowl. So for people who are feeding an ultra processed food and have no idea where to start, the place that you start is just get some fresh food in the bowl. So if you're
Mm.
feeding kibble, by the way, holistic and natural mean nothing on the labels. Like, just ignore those words.
Interesting.
Doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
There's no definition for that. Like, you can put that on the worst of the. You can put it on shoe leather and say it's natural.
It's naturally processed.
Ignore those names. So, I want to see real food names. And my pets have been raw fed for 25 years. I've never had a problem. CDC, AVMA, AHA, and most veterinarians have signs in their offices and on their websites that say, don't feed raw food to your pets. You'll all die of salmonella, E. coli, and listeria. Well, I've never had a problem at my house. We eat raw milk. We eat raw eggs. I've got all those animals outside.
Right.
So, and it's never been a problem. Obviously, be careful on your sourcing on that.
Makes a difference.
So, I'm a huge fan of raw feeding. It's not for everyone. Everybody wants convenience. That's really why we have dry kibble and we have cans that we can pop open, because it's convenience. But guess what? These companies that make gently cooked and raw food that's complete and balanced for your dogs and cats, they put them in single serving size packages or a package that might last you a day or two that you can split up. Like, I have 4 dogs and I buy my food in frozen 1-pound packages. That's one meal.
Yeah.
So it's great. I thaw it out, I warm it up, I split it 4 ways.
Yeah.
Easy to do. Our 7 barn cats, they eat 2 pounds at a time. So it all goes on their little platter and everybody chows down. So to me, it's really no less convenient. If I'm traveling, I love to use freeze-dried food.
Yeah.
Freeze-dried food is made to be rehydrated. It's not exactly the same. We do lose a little bit of the nutrient density with the freeze drying process, but it's not a high heat thing. It's definitely a huge improvement. And so you rehydrate it with bone broth or warm water. And so they're eating that high moisture diet that they're meant to eat. The dry food is much more of a problem for our cats. In order to make an extruded dry kibble, it has to have a starch to hold it together to go through the extrusion process. So most dry foods are going to be 40 to 60% carbohydrates. Our pets have zero requirement for carbohydrates, and cats are obligate carnivores. They're little meatosauruses, little velociraptors who are supposed to eat meat, and we're feeding them all wrong. And that's why we have obesity, diabetes, pancreatitis, urinary tract problems. And so that was the great thing about my practice. People come in, they've got a cat, it's got chronic constipation problems, chronic urinary problems, it's obese, it wants to be diabetic. And it's like, okay, we're going to switch their diet. We're going to put them on a species appropriate diet, which for a cat is a lot of meat and a lot of moisture. And poof, all the problems go away. And it's like, Doc, you're a miracle worker. No, I just actually fed him what God designed him to eat. Yay me.
Right. Yeah.
And so those are the kind of miracles we got to see, but only because we were doing things the way God intended them to be, which is, this is what your dog should eat. And, people who want to have a vegetarian cat, please trade your cat in for a hamster.
Yeah.
Vegetarian cats don't survive.
Right.
They die from really awful things. And I don't care how many synthetic vitamins you add back in there, it is not the same. And so if I had a client who came to me with their vegetarian cat, I would invite them to go somewhere else, because I was not going to be a part of losing that cat to something that was preventable.
Right.
So, and that may sound harsh, but it's like, get over yourself. And I have a lot of vegetarian clients who have spent a lot of time making meals with liver and hearts and, all the gross stuff. Like, I have one woman in one of my books, I had people write stories, and she wrote a story about how she had to actually go ask somebody in the grocery store about meat because she had never bought it. And
Yeah.
she's like, what does liver look like? Where do I find it? Do you even have that? And she didn't want to touch it. So when she had to make the food for her dog, and she actually took cooking lessons to learn how to cook because she didn't know how to cook. And, this is what people will do for their pets. And she's in her story, she said, I put on 3 plastic aprons and 3 layers of plastic gloves to handle the meat that I had to handle to make the food that my dog needed.
Yep.
But, she was willing to do what we needed to do to get the dog healthy, and it worked. So she was very thankful. And then she started cooking meals for her and her father. And it's like, okay, well, see, this was a good thing. I mean, you can still cook vegetarian meals, but this was a good thing.
This is a good thing. It is. It is. I have to say, and to your point, I've been feeding my dogs raw food that I have delivered to my house frozen for over 10 years. And my vet is completely against it. Always is constantly telling me I am doing the wrong thing. It's terrible. And only once, I had one dog who had cancer for 5 years, and only towards the end of his life did his doctor suggest I move from the not cooked raw food to a freeze-dried raw food version of it because of his health. And so that was the only time. But we still stuck to the raw, but it was like, freeze-dried for her. So towards the end, she was like, because he had a lot of issues and he was sick, but he lived with cancer for 5 years on raw food. And everyone comes to my house and they're like, your dogs have the most beautiful coat I have ever seen on a dog. And I was like, that's because they eat a raw food diet. And I don't eat meat. So I mean, I would never touch any of the other than like the carrots and the spinach and the vegetables that are mixed into their food. But their food does come with like pieces of bone in it and, stuff, and because the company who makes it, their belief is like, if they were living in the wild, this is what they would be eating.
Well, and they need that bone for calcium.
Yes.
So, and that's one of the problems. One of the reasons veterinarians are so against any alternative diets, because they don't feel that they can be complete and balanced. Well, believe me, the companies that are making these gently cooked and raw foods, they understand the rules. And if it says on there that it is balanced to AAFCO standards, then it's complete. And it's as complete as any of those ultra processed diets are, which interestingly, there was a study done, I think it was in 2017 in Europe, and they tested like 170 different ultra processed foods, canned and dry kibble. And of them, they all said complete and balanced on the label. And when they tested them, over 90% of the canned foods were not complete and balanced, were not up to standard. And over 60% of the dry foods were not up to standard. Yeah. So these are the only ones that are complete and balanced. Well, there's a myth.
Right. You have to do your homework. I think just like I have guests on here all the time and we advocate, especially women's health. You have to be the CEO of your own health. You have to get educated. You have to advocate for yourself. You have to do the research. You have to read the labels. You have to read the studies about the things that you're going to put into your body. It is very similar to animals. Like, read the label. What's the first ingredient on it? What's in the product that you're giving your
right? Well, read the label and understand what it means.
Right.
So here's one of the games that they play. They'll change the names on things. So there's a very expensive hydrolyzed hypoallergenic diet kibble made for dogs. They may even make a cat one, but when they first came out with it, and it's made by one of the big companies. When they first came out with it, the first ingredient was hydrolyzed poultry feathers. So I'm like, okay, the main ingredient in this is bird feathers, like chicken feathers. This is our protein source.
Right.
And this stuff at the time was $90 a bag. Now it's like $150. And I was like, really? So I would go live and ask people, are you really paying $90 a bag? And do you know that you're feeding your pet bird feathers? Yeah. Like, they're getting those for free.
Yeah.
So at an AAFCO meeting a couple years later, the company stood up and said, we need a ingredient name change. and we want to change the hydrolyzed poultry feathers to hydrolyzed poultry protein isolate.
Oh, geez. Oh, my
So
goodness.
if you're the pet owner and you're reading the ingredients, you're like, bird protein.
Okay. Yeah, right.
Must be
Sounds
good.
okay. Yeah.
Must be good.
Yeah.
So, these are the games that they will play so that you don't understand
Yeah,
what
of
it is.
course.
So, yes, be a label reader, but do you have any idea what it means? Do you
Yeah.
what is that? What is a meat byproduct?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Right.
byproducts are the parts that are not human edible,
Yeah.
which, hearts and livers are actually great, but it also includes, feet and beaks and heads, and which may not be all bad. I mean, when we process chickens, our dogs eat the feet and the heads.
Yes.
But if it says meat byproduct, which meat?
Right.
Is that bird, cow, pig, duck? I don't know.
Yeah.
So never buy anything that is an unnamed
Mhm.
meat. That's
Yeah,
like the
right.
bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. Right. But it does make a difference, I have to say. I mean, I have found in my dogs, like, they don't have allergies. I mean, I've rescued almost all my animals, and they always come with, skin issues
Everything.
and allergy issues and no fur and all these things.
Ear
and
infections.
Oh, yeah, all the things and the limping and all the things. And it is, I personally, as a case study of one, can say it is unbelievable how much better they can get by having a good diet of good food.
Yeah.
It is
We've
unbelievable.
probably brought in over 100 rescue animals.
Good for you.
In our house. We started out rescuing Cavalier King Charles and English Toy Spaniels. So we've had a bunch of those go through, which, now I've become kind of an expert in the breed just because I've had so many of them and they've all come with all of the spaniel problems.
Mhm. Yeah.
But now that we have our farm, we even rescue farm animals. So, I've always wanted a donkey since I was a little kid, and I finally got them when I was 62 years old.
Good for you.
And, of course, they came from the kill pen. So they came with, they had lice, they had respiratory infections, they had overgrown feet. Oh my gosh, what a mess. And again, we're like, okay, well, what can we do to change this? Well, diet is a huge, just giving them care for one thing.
Yeah.
But we got rid of the lice and the parasite infestations all naturally using herbs and powders. And we didn't have to resort to using chemicals to solve the issues. And now they're thriving. I mean, they have the best life in the world. They don't do a darn thing.
Yeah.
I have all these pasture ornaments. But, they had a rough start. And I'm like, what, if you can live out your life here and just be loved, yay.
Right.
What's
Good
wrong
for
with
you.
that?
Good for you. All right. Before we run out of time, I have a question. Grain free. I feel like just as in people, in animals, grain free is like all the craze. It's all over everything. What's your take on grain? Because I will say, I do know that if a food product for your pet is like, grain is one of the first 3 ingredients in different words, like that's probably not that good for you. But what's your take on grains and grain free?
Our pets have no requirement for carbohydrates, so they have no requirement for grains. The grains that are used in pet food are usually the moldy, broken grains because they can't be used in the human food industry. And yes, we can fumigate those big tankers full of grains to get rid of the mold. But when the molds die, they release mold toxins, which are very toxic to our pets. And there have been probably the biggest recalls that we've had have been for mold toxins in pet food, mostly dry kibble, because that's where the most grain is used.
Yeah.
We can also get those toxins from peas and lentils. And the pets that eat the food that contains all of those grains and legumes have high glyphosate levels when we test them versus the raw fed pets who aren't eating all that stuff have very low glyphosate levels. Really interesting. I don't really want glyphosate in me or my pets either.
Yeah.
The veterinarians have all gotten on this craze due to a really, really bad thing that happened in around 2018 where one veterinarian who happens to be sponsored by a lot of big pet food companies said, "Oh, I think we're seeing more dilated cardiomyopathy in pets who eat grain-free foods. There must be a connection." And then wrote a letter to the editor, not a peer-reviewed article, not a study, wrote a letter to the editor that every veterinarian latched onto like white on rice and said, "Oh my gosh, we have to feed grains to our dogs so that they don't get dilated cardiomyopathy." Wrong.
Right.
But my cardiologist that I take my dog to still tells me that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been debunked. Even the FDA put on their website that they found no connection. Like, get over it already.
Yeah.
No, you do not need to feed grains. I will not feed grains. My dogs don't eat grains. My cats don't eat grains. They're not going to eat grains. I don't even eat that many grains.
Yeah, it's true.
I eat
I
very
don't either.
few.
I don't either. Yeah. No, you're right. It's so true. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure we are a grain-free household for the most part, especially for our pets. But it is. I mean, I know my vet has the same thing. Like, oh, that's ridiculous. And I'm like, I just don't know that they need that. Like, I don't know that we need to add something that isn't necessarily
When's
what's
the last time you saw
required.
your dog go out in a wheat field and eat grain?
I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's weird.
Not gonna
Well, and the
happen.
other weird thing is like my dogs will eat grass, but they eat grass like when their stomach hurts is when they're eating grass. And it's like,
They
so,
do. Interestingly,
okay.
cats really they need a fiber source in their diet.
Mhm.
And so a lot of people, if you have indoor cats, if you grow the little trays of wheatgrass for them when it's really young and tender and soft, oh man, they'll chow down on it.
Yeah.
But that's because they need that fiber to support their microbiome in their
Yeah.
gut.
Yeah.
So sometimes when your dog is eating grass, he might be looking for part of that microbiome support. And sometimes they're eating the dirt with
Mhm.
the grass. And so they're getting fulvic acid and humic acid. And so a lot of times when they're doing that, yeah, maybe they have a GI upset, but maybe they're just self-medicating or they're trying to give us a hint. So one of my dogs who came to me with everything under the sun wrong and every parasite you can imagine. And so he was anemic. And he would go out and steal the really good potting soil in my plants. And he would just chow down on that stuff. And I'm like, oh, you need iron. You need fulvic and humic acid. Got it. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah.
And, he'd be fine for a while. And then every once in a while, I'd see him out there chowing down. I'm like, oh, we got to pick it up again. You need more. Okay.
Yeah.
It's zoopharmacognosy, where it's basically allowing them to pick their own.
Yeah.
So, in horse fields, we should plant hedgerows with all kinds of herbs and plants. And actually, I have huge herb gardens. My dogs and cats are out there picking stuff all the time. They are self-medicating, and it's really fun to watch them. They'll
What they
go to
pick.
one and go, nope. Go to the next one, taste it, go, nope. Go to the next one, and then eat the whole plant. And I'm like, oh, okay. So that's kind of fun.
That is. That's really cool. I love that. All right. Before we run out of time, I do have two last questions for you. One, I want to make sure we covered everything that is important to cover. I mean, you and I could talk for hours, literally hours. There's so much to talk about, but I want to make sure, did I miss anything or is there any message that you want to make sure you convey that we haven't covered?
I think we hit all the high points, for people that are curious. And my website, naturallyhealthypets.com, has so much information, free downloads, blogs, videos. We also have courses available, but it's the best thing that people could do is empower themselves through education. So just start reading.
Yes. And your website is phenomenal. It's like a rabbit hole, people. You can just you can just go dig down a rabbit hole. And you can also go to YouTube and look you up on YouTube because you have your podcast on YouTube and you have just some really fascinating guests. And it's almost as you're watching it, you almost forget that you're talking about animals because so much of the subject matter is exactly what is so popular today for humans. But you're bringing that subject matter of holistic health and wellness to pets. And so absolutely go to YouTube, guys. It'll be in the show notes. You can definitely go check it out because you have just a wealth of information, knowledge on your website. So thank you for that. It's amazing what you're putting out for the public. Okay, I'd love to ask everybody to recommend a book. I love to share books. I think books change lives and educate and inform people. And I would love to know, is there a book that you would like to recommend to the listeners and the watchers?
Yeah, so in April, my husband and I did a spiritual retreat for a few days at the Billy Graham Center in North Carolina. And so we had a one-on-one with one of the leaders, and my husband was questioning a little bit. And I was a little surprised. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I didn't know there was a question here. So that was a little bit shocking to me, but gave me something to focus on. But this was what they recommended, and it's a book called Heaven.
Okay.
And anyone who has any question at all, read Heaven. And from there, we're on like book number 20 that it came out of.
Yeah.
Now we have to go to this one and then this one and then this one. So it's just been it's a journey, and I'm really enjoying it.
Oh, I love that. I've never heard of that book, but that sounds like a really good one. I'm going to have to pick that one up. I love it. We'll put it in the show notes for everybody also.
Great.
Dr. Morgan, thank you so much for your time and your intelligence and just your passion and commitment to educating people on something that honestly doesn't get enough airtime. So I thank you so much for taking the time to be a guest and for everything that you're trying to do for our four-legged friends. So thank you. We will definitely tag you when this comes out on social media. We'll share it. We'll educate as many people as we can on our platform. So I thank you so much. I hope you have a beautiful week ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Building the Best You. If you are ready to take a deeper dive into transforming your life, check out my Empowerment Fundamentals course on my website, houseofgermar.com. Thank you, and I will see you next week with another inspiring guest.